Hi, I am Luke Oxley, a veteran of Team 6498, and today I'm going to be going over how to troubleshoot a program. The first thing to keep in mind is breathe. It's going to be okay. Troubleshooting is definitely the hardest part of programming, and you'll probably get mad one or two times, but eventually it will be okay. Now, the contents of this presentation contain general tips for troubleshooting, how to read errors, where to place printouts and output to the smart dashboard, where to comment out lines in the program, how to deal with connection issues, and different strategies for troubleshooting at a competition. First off, the general tips I have are don't add a bunch to a program without testing periodically. This is because if you add a bunch and then you go to test and the whole thing doesn't work, you won't know specifically what part is broken. Now, if this is unavoidable, like if you're just programming a bunch without access to the robot, try to comment out sections whenever you go to download the program and test each one individually so that you do have an idea of what part of the program is broken. Now, whenever you actually do program, I recommend to do this in an environment without distractions. For me, this definitely helps improve the quality of the program and minimize stupid mistakes. For this also, I recommend headphones. It just helps with concentration. Now on reading errors, for errors in the VS Code console, usually it'll have a line number and a class that the error occurred. This usually will get you pretty close, but if you don't recognize what it says about the error, like what's going on, you can just look up on Google the same error, and someone else has probably ran into the same thing. It's very common to have error codes on the internet. Now, reading errors on the driver station console, sometimes the console will say a class and a line number where the error occurred, and this is usually pretty helpful for finding where the error is at. Once again, look up things you don't know or that you don't recognize. Now, if the code, I've ran into this many times, if the code just keeps crashing, double check that you have not assigned a port to something, because usually it won't tell you that this is the error. It'll just say that, oh, your robot code has crashed. Go back and double check that you don't have like two sensors on the same DIO port. It's very easy to do this, so just double check that. Now, whenever you're doing printouts, be cautious with doing a bunch of repeated printouts, because if you have a bunch and they're repeating every single iteration, you won't be able to really make out anything from your printouts. If you do have to have a repeated printout, have only one repeating at a time, or possibly even print out every other repetition so that it's not spamming the console so much. Usually what we print out are changes in system state, so this will contain in a subsystem the previous state, the new system state, and usually the timestamp definitely helps too. Now for printouts, there is a shortcut in VS Code. You type syso, and then you hold down Control, space, and Enter. And this will do a shortcut for system.out.println. It's just very helpful. Now in our subsystems, all of them do have a method to output to the smart dashboard. And things to output are motor speeds, sensor outputs, and calculated values from like a really complex formula to make sure that your formula isn't broken. Usually vision values from the limelight and key variables that you just want to monitor. And this usually definitely helps with troubleshooting your program and seeing if it's your program that's messing up or if it's a sensor that's messing up. Another troubleshooting tactic is commenting out sections of the program. This definitely helps to narrow down issues of what line is causing the error. Now, if it's a large multi-step process that's completely broken and you're not sure where to start, comment all the steps out except the first one first, and slowly add on a step until you find which step is broken. Now this is a cute little diagram of single line comments and multi-line comments in case you forgot in Java. Next, troubleshooting connection issues. This is probably the most common issue that we have with our robot program. First things off is check if the RoboRio is up to date. You won't be able to connect to it from the smart dashboard if you haven't upgraded the firmware, so this is usually the first step to do. Then check if the router is up to date, and usually you won't be able to connect to the robot in the smart dashboard at all if it's out of date. If this doesn't work, just reconfigure the router anyway. That usually helps fix issues. And also, I found that sometimes tethering once first over Ethernet from the laptop to the robot will help as well. I also do have a PDF on how to flash the firmware to the router. Now I'm going to discuss some tactics I have for troubleshooting at a competition. First things to start off with are the configurations for your laptops. This includes your drive laptop and your programming laptop. Now you're going to want to disable Wi-Fi in the control panel on both of them, not just turning Wi-Fi off or airplane mode. You actually go in the control panel in the network settings and completely disable Wi-Fi. Now, during competitions, we usually use a USB to Ethernet converter. We've seen that this just usually works better than the regular Ethernet port. But if you do use the USB port, check your USB power settings to make sure that they don't have like the sleep mode to where you'll be using it and then the USB port just goes to sleep and turns off. Also double check that your controllers, your Xbox controllers, are plugged in and in decent condition. And also make sure that your controllers have the right ID in the driver station. You don't want drivers switching controllers mid-match and accidentally unplugging one. This did happen, so let's prevent this from happening in the future. Now, things to do after a match. The time directly after a match is the most critical part in troubleshooting the mistake. So the first thing you want to do are personally talk to the drivers. Ask them what they saw and what they think the problem is. Then, based on what you think's going on, ask them any more specific questions. Then in the pit, if you're not really sure, try to replicate the issue and make it happen again. And also, just to kind of improve the program, ask the drivers if they have any suggestions for improvement, like anything to make driving the robot easier or simpler. Then check the match log. To do this, you can go in the driver station, click the settings icon in the top right corner, and then open the log. And this will have an entire log of all of the console printouts, battery voltage, connection, and a timestamp for the entire issue. This is definitely helpful for troubleshooting anything really. And for any errors on the printouts, they'll be highlighted in red. Also check the display chart. This is like the graph of all the different colors of things for any unique characteristics once you have a general timestamp of where the error occurred. And some just general tips for troubleshooting at a competition. If you're clueless and don't know what to do, the TSA people are the people wearing orange hats. They are very helpful, so be very nice to them. Usually if we have any issues with connecting to the field, these are the people we go to first. Also check to make sure that your sensors and motors are working before and after matches to make sure no damage has occurred. Try to look for any loose connections, especially in power wires and Ethernet cables to the Power over Ethernet, RoboRio, network switch, and Limelight. These are all devices that we've had connections for the power wires come loose, so let's prevent this from happening again. Also, if you find any large bundles of wire that could be flopping around, Zip tie them down, because if you leave them loose, they can eventually bounce around so much to where they come disconnected. So let's make sure that they can't move around. And that's all. Thanks, guys.